Hi there, I'm Alyson, a consultant here at Blue Sky Strategy Group, and I'm joined today by my colleagues Stuart McCarthy and Hussain Shorish for the third episode of What You Need to Know, a Canadian podcast that focuses on the federal budget delivered this week. Now, Hussain and Stuart, I brought you guys together today to discuss the aspects of the federal budget that deal with innovation. I've talked to Tim and Jeff and Cam yesterday about the shift towards green technology and the innovation policies. Are they tied to this green shift? We'll start with you, Stuart.
Yeah, very much so. The government's entire focus seems to be on green and clean, whether it is in, whether it's fuels, whether it's the oil patch, whether it's building, and whether it's innovation. And when we look at the initiatives that are in the budget, and as a number of the tax measures as well, they're all really focused on prioritizing clean energy. Post COVID, I mean, a lot of the money that people had expected to be spent on these areas, that got derailed, that got sidelined with COVID-19. A lot of that money was repurposed. So everybody was looking for this budget for recapitalization. So some of the big chunks of this, Strategic Innovation Fund has become the mainstay of this government's, bank for investing in innovation. We saw, the recapitalization that went into that, though, was $5 billion for the Net Zero Accelerator Fund. What's net zero? It's about identifying technologies and investing in new things, clean fuel, hydrogen, solar, electrification, everything to eliminate fossil fuels and move to a green economy and achieve our net zero carbon goals by 2050. Economic recovery was still a big part of that. 1.75 billion in that fund went to the aerospace sector, which has been really hurt for this. Now, this is not, this is in addition to the money that was already announced for the bailout for the airlines. So this is sector. This is for the industry. This is for the Canadian companies, the hundreds and hundreds of Canadian companies that provide equipment, develop solutions in the aerospace sector.
Yeah. So you're saying not so much for the airlines, but
absolutely not.
The ones that help build the planes. Airlines,
yeah, it's the people who build the planes, not the people who fly the planes. But a big chunk of that is, green aerospace is a priority on that. So biofuels, refueling of and eliminating carbon there, because that's a very intensive space. Money went into life sciences and biomanufacturing. A lot of money that was earmarked for that went to emergency development, emergency supply of personal protective equipment. We did see some investments. Unfortunately, some of them went south. Spartan Aerospace would be one of those. Where the government jumped quickly into investing in a rapid COVID-19 detection technology that hasn't worked. So we can discuss this a little later as well, but every time they make one of these investments, a gun-shy government, when it comes to investing that is risk adverse, will become a little more risk adverse, when an investment like that fails. Regional development agencies have been a huge part of economic development, growth, acceleration, expansion for businesses, and helping them transform, adopt new technologies. So a lot of new money there, $700 million for the RDAs over 3 years, plus the creation. Western Canada had been treated as a single territory, so everything from Manitoba through to British Columbia. So now they've split that. They created a new economic development agency for British Columbia. There's a lot of innovation out in BC, so 500 million plus there, over 5 years, and then commitment of $100 million beyond in that RDA. Not touching the money that they, not reducing the money they have in the RDA for the other provinces. So that means more money there. Federal Economic Development Region for Northern Ontario, FedNor, which has been an initiative, not its own real agency, is now becoming an agency. I think there's a lot of thought there as we move through to critical minerals, the development that's going to take place. If you recall, a few years ago, Ring of Fire was a
that's right.
was part of the development. There's a lot to do there. Venture capital funding. The government was very successful, previously with what they called their Venture Capital Catalyst Initiative. And they had another VC fund they set up. And what they've done is they went out, they've allocated money, they've identified professional fund managers, the pros who do this and are good at picking winners and good at taking that risk. And investing that. So they've put another $450 million into that over the next 5 years.
And it was initially sorry, I cut you in, Stuart, but it was initially a successful program.
Yeah.
That's why they've topped it, because that was something that was needed, and more so than now, because now businesses are thinking that can we find domestic sources to fund our projects, right? So the fact that they've went in and topped up the VC CI is an indication that it was a successful program, and the government sees that it's beneficial to go back at it to ensure that we do have a good economic recovery, but we do bring in the private sector back into these partnerships. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So a lot of opportunities here in innovation then in this budget. Would you not say, Hussain?
Oh, absolutely. Listen, Stuart laid out all the programs that, within the innovation part of the budget. And, just to top up on that, I'd say that there's a lot of opportunity there, and I think it's definitely a win for innovation in Canada overall. I would say that it is a quite safe budget when it comes to innovation as well, because a lot of the programs were, the existing flagship programs, essentially, right? There wasn't something that was out of the blue. There wasn't something that the government said, look, this is a part of the economy we really want to focus on. And we're going to create, for example, a new program. No, they tried to stay safe, and that's not a bad approach, especially it is a pandemic budget, right? So it's not a bad approach to remain safe. But at the same time, I'd say that the thinking behind this is 100% towards green technology, right? And we saw yesterday that the Prime Minister committed us to 45% reduction in emissions by 2030. It's highly aspirational, but that underlines even more so that all of the innovation policies will definitely be tied into green technologies. And this budget,
he had like the budget sets around that 35 or 36%. So he's now, the budget's got this guideline, but now he set it to here, and it seems like we're going more towards aggressiveness, and that's where innovation will really come in handy in Canada, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think what we're seeing as well is the government's decided to, as I say, rip the Band-Aid off, right? So, you look at traditional industry, we've had a pandemic. Yes, there've been lots of jobs lost in a lot of areas, so now we want to do economic recovery. Is the direction going to be rebuilding up the old, only then to have to address carbon and address the green energy thing and then manage that down? Or do you now say, you know what, those jobs are lost. Let's retrain, let's rebuild, let's focus, and let's use this as that opportunity to get us to where we want to go. And I think that's what we're going to see here. The oil patch might not like it, but so that's what we're seeing now. That's why there's a focus on things like carbon capture. A lot of this innovation is that energy related. So it's the carbon capture, it's the electrification, it's transforming into new fuels, it's hydrogen, it's all that stuff. That is all part of innovation. I think one thing I also wanted to mention was this government is also focused on gender. It's also focused on racialized communities. So it's good to see that, in some of this money, the VCCI program, for instance, there are set-asides in there for women entrepreneurs. There's set-asides in there for racialized communities. So there's we want to grow, and we want to grow in as many places as possible. And there's a lot of great ideas out there. Typically, attention isn't paid equally across the board. Yeah. So this is a good sign.
Yeah, you're right. I think, and as I think we've heard the Prime Minister say before, this country has a lot of smart people, a lot of great ideas, and we need to keep bringing those to fruition, right? So we've got a lot of money here for these opportunities to be had, correct?
Yes, there is. And now here's the rub. The government doesn't have a money problem per se. The government has a spending problem. So this budget builds on other things that are out there. The innovation superclusters. So we talked about 60 million recapitalization of the superclusters. They got $800 million a number of years ago. Not all that money has gone out the door. There is a real challenge as well when you're dealing with an innovation. The real world moves at a very fast pace. A lot of these developments, 30, 60, 90 days, if it's software driven, if it's digital, these things are ready to go. They're ready to move. People can develop from scratch and be ready to go in a quarter. Problem here is the government's risk adversity in getting involved with these, reviewing these programs, doing the analysis. It can be 6 months. It can take a year on the cycle at times before, from an application through to actually finding the money. Another
Too much
problem.
red tape then.
A lot of red tape. Secondly, this money's supposed to be a catalyst for the industry. However, too often companies are coming in, or entrepreneurs come in looking for this money, and then they're being asked, well, where's your private sector? Where's your partnerships? Where's too often, too many of these companies have to have everything lined up before they come into the money. I'd certainly love to see a shift on that. I'd love to see much quicker conditional approval of this money. And saying, yeah, this is a great idea. Notionally, we think this is good. Okay, we can earmark this for you now, but we're not giving it to you. You now need to go out and find X millions or X $100,000 from the private sector or from partners. Bring this in. Show us that this is viable. We're there. We're giving you that support. When you come back to us now, the money's there. That will be a much better, much bigger catalyst for a lot of these small companies.
And when you have such a big budget, and just to tie this up on what Stuart said, 100%, when you have such a big budget and when you have such huge spending, the number one challenge then becomes how fast this money will go out of the door, right? A lot of these programs that are announced, or these flagship programs, for example, the Net Zero Accelerator Fund, we don't even know specifically what the parameters around that program will be, how that program will actually be administered, how the money will go out of the door. These are going to be real challenges, right? Because as we definitely know, sometimes programs are announced by the government, and then public servants are put in the loop later on, right? So there's always that chasing after each other and understanding on where the priorities are and how this money is supposed to get out of the door. So there's going to be definitely that challenge that's going to be there. Overall, I would say that definitely this is a win overall for this government in terms of innovation. I will also highlight, and on what you said, Alyson, earlier on, is we have a lot of smart people in this country. Absolutely. I would have liked to see, and we can definitely discuss on what's nice in this in this budget. And as I mentioned, all of these flagship programs that the government announced in 2017. And just to take another step back, this is definitely a renewal of that 2017 budget. We've seen the same programs, we've seen top-ups, absolutely. But I'd like to see that what we saw during this pandemic is a lot of entrepreneurship. And I would have liked to see a strategy on that. I would like to see, this government putting together a strategy on entrepreneurship, putting money aside for startups at universities. There's a lot of good stuff out there. There's a lot of young people with great ideas who are contributing to this country in many different ways. I would have liked to see something like that as well, a support for them. But overall, I'd say that the real challenge is going to be for many of these businesses to realize that, this is a win for them. They don't need to set up shop elsewhere. The money is there. They can remain in Canada and trust this government to deliver on these programs, but they need to be at the forefront and ensure that the money goes out of the door as soon as possible, because otherwise we'll be, 12 months ago in the same position where a lot of these funds are there, but the access is denied.
And the companies just realize they need people like you guys to help them get that money and get into the door and get them noticed, right?
And we're here for that.
It is a minefield to navigate. It is a minefield to navigate. Absolutely.
Would you say innovation then is probably the biggest minefield in terms of all the regulations and policies?
If you look at how it's how the government has addressed this, I mean, it's a bit like whack-a-mole, and it's a bit like sticking your finger in a bowl of Jello. The programs are constantly adjusted. The parameter, this is where the challenge is. Once we see a program, all of a sudden, if you're not there ready to go when it starts, the parameters of the program start to shift. And then you'll find that when you were good 30 days ago, now you're sort of not there, not in the mix anymore. Or they've said, oh, we wanted to capture this, so we've readjusted the parameters now. You're on the outside, you're not inside. Again, it's those partnerships that are now, if you're a company and you think that, oh, I've got a great idea, I'm going to go to the government, I want them to fund it. Who are your partners? Who are you bringing to the table? Where's academia? Do you have a big partner on there? Do you even have do you have a lead government agency? Who have you been speaking to? And this is, there's some procurements going on right now, that require you to have those kind of partnerships. To Hussain's point on smart people and fostering that, one of the things they did bring in from a policy perspective, they've put money towards it, is IP protection, making sure that Canadian intellectual property is developed and protected. We're seeing a focus on this now that, they want to keep that here. They'll be very mindful of that being rated at the university level, and with academia, with foreign investment coming in, foreign partnerships, and then having that disappear out of the country and not being developed here. Universities, to some extent, have been their own worst enemy in that regard. There's a lot of IP that's been developed at universities. It's not been commercialized. It's been retained by the universities, and they've been reluctant to license that out to Canadian companies, let alone international.
With the way universities are, what's happening with the university situation right now because of COVID, this might be a golden opportunity for them to expand, right, and find ways of revenue that they aren't necessarily getting during COVID, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
So overall, guys, thumbs up, thumbs down for innovation in the budget?
I'd say pretty positive. Look, no amount of money is ever enough. So
no, it's definitely a thumbs up. Absolutely. I think it's I'm going to reiterate and say it's definitely a win for a lot of these businesses and for innovation in general. Just in terms of the reaction from the political parties, from stakeholders, the general consensus is that it definitely is a win for innovation and for small businesses, but the government will have to put the money where their mouth is, essentially, in the next few months, and we'll see how all of this gets rolled out in the next few months. And we also have a election, hopefully, this year. And I say hopefully because that will definitely define a lot of different parameters on these programs as well, and see where the actual priorities lie moving forward.
That's hugely important. This is a budget that has to survive that election.
True.
And also, what measures will the government put in place during an election period to make how much of this money will be approved so that bureaucrats can continue to deploy and do this while that election process is going on?
Well, it'll be interesting to see. Stuart and Hussain, thank you so much for joining me today in our final part of our series looking at the federal budget. I really appreciate it. Good discussion.
Alyson, thank you.
And thank you to the viewers for tuning in to What You Need to Know, a Canadian Polycast. Take care, and we'll speak to you next time.
I know.
Blue Sky Strategy Group is one of Canada's leading public affairs firms. For government relations, lobbying, and strategic communications advice across Canada, visit us at blueskystrategygroup.com. Blue Sky Strategy Group is a proud member of the Global Communications Alliance.